future thinking is not only about thinking, okay, what do I want to reach or what do I see? It is also about, and what do I do about it right now in this moment? On warpath with the word roadmap, because how you use a roadmap on open water. What do you do with a roadmap when you're out at the sea?
Yeah.
Certainty is an illusion created by us. So
Yes.
the more you realize about that, the more comfortable you feel.
Welcome to Strategy Meets Reality podcast. I'm your host, Mike Jones, and today I'm joined by Eva Tomas, a futurist by nature, engineer by training, and a philosopher at heart. Eva helps leaders move beyond linear plans in futures thinking, collective sense-making, and complexity. In this conversation, we explore all things futures and strategy, her Banyan model, and why certainty is an illusion, and the question we rarely ask, what future do you want? Welcome to Strategy Meets Reality podcast. Great to introduce Eva. How are you doing?
I'm fine today. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Just for our guests, do you mind giving a bit of context about yourself, what you've been up to recently?
Okay. I like to introduce myself as, hi, I'm Eva. I'm a futurist by nature, an engineer by training, and a philosopher at heart. So I have a multitude of interests. And so when you ask me the simple question of what I've been up to, it's a bunch of answers. In general, I'm working in the realm of futures and strategy and the connection thereof. And I'm doing that in various contexts. So I'm working on the one hand with organizations, corporations, companies. And on the other side, I'm doing the same with youth and with teachers, because I love to hear also this perspective, and it brings a completely different flavor into my work. I feel that complexity is a big issue out there for a lot of companies. And what I found on my own journey is that thinking really does help. So that's why my company is called Simple Thinking. So I just work with leaders and organizations and introduce them to different perspectives, different ways of thinking about topics like strategy, like complexity, like organization, like vision, and see what new ways we can find.
Oh, awesome. I laughed and we laughed when we said about, all this stuff is about thinking, but leaders don't really tend to have or give themselves much time for this thinking. We see that they say, the world's so unpredictable, so they end up just fast themselves down and go for the ride. But when we think about futures and the world being unpredictable and quite fast moving, how can futures help leaders?
That's a great question. So first of all, there's a distinction to make. I meet a lot of leaders or organizations who say they feel the world is unpredictable, when feeling is not the right word, because it is unpredictable. So that's a fact in the system we are living in. And what futures can do for you is, if you open up these thinking spaces, because you're right, in our fast-paced business world, there is not a lot of room to take a step back in order to gaze further. What engaging with futures work and future thinking can do is to help you lift up the gaze and see beyond the immediate, and also then find new ways to this beyond the immediate, because when you look further, you not only see a different kind of horizon, but it opens also up the immediate space in front of you, and you can take different kind of decisions. So ultimately, future thinking is not only about thinking, okay, what do I want to reach? What do I want to see? Or what do I see? It is also about, and what do I do about it right now in this moment? This connection is a very important one for me.
And I think that's often missed, is that people look to the future and think, well, that's great, that's in the future, but they don't realise they've got to bring that back. It's almost a reaching out and then bringing it back. So it informs their decisions today, and I think that connection is often missed.
Yeah, or on the other hand, a lot of people, they are taking the past or the present and they're just putting that forward into the future. So it's like a little bit, we are living in rolling forecast times. I like to call it like this. It's like, we know how it's been until today, and we take it and mix it, give it a little bit of twist. Most of the time it's a technology twist these days. So you add a little bit of AI and you add a little bit of robotics, and then you call that a future. And sometimes it pays off to go a little bit beyond this. I call that, by the way, futures, present futures. So it's a kind of mix up we tend to work with what is not really future thinking. So to open the mind spaces up to really envision and go beyond the known and the immediate takes time and space. And what you said in the beginning, this is something which is very rare and very precious
Yeah.
in the times we are living in.
Yeah, and I think in the time that they do have, it's about doing it properly. And I think that when you mention futures to people, it can seem overwhelming, especially when you look at like the scenario planning world, where I've been involved in them. It's taken months to do, some of the scenario plannings, and that could be off-putting for leaders. One, for cost and time and space to do it. So how can we make futures more usable for leaders?
I think this is also why I engage in complexity and futures, because there is a connection there. Because if you work with leaders and organizations, that they fully understand what complexity really means and what impacts that has on our daily life, be it in the private or be it in the professional, then you can engage them with the idea of futures in a very different way, because then you are finding this, okay, there is no predictability, there is no linearity anymore. This linear idea from I do this now and this happens as a consequence, this is gone in the world we are living in. And most of the planning instruments we are working today with are thought for this kind of idea. So they are linear, step-by-step roadmaps until a very definite goal. And this is also a finding I have in my work. I feel that by using these tools, we are producing so much friction between the complex reality around us and the linear tools we are trying to use to tame it, to control it, that this friction results in the fact that leaders, or up to the top, to the C-suite, they are engaged so much in immediate issues because of all these fires which are coming out of these friction sparks. So when you engage with this idea, okay, this linear thing, it's just not there, or there in a very, very limited context. I don't want to dismiss it completely because that would not be fair either. Then it makes it clear why engaging with futures in the plural, with the idea that where we are heading to is not a point, but a landscape, it's a horizon, it's a spectrum.
Yes.
Then it makes it very clear that we need to really think and act differently in the now, is my experience.
Yeah, you bring a great point. And I'm so glad you brought about the unpredictability and the linear cause relationships. Hence why I created this podcast, because of those reasons.
Yeah, I love the title, by the way. Because this is exactly what I was just speaking about.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point there as well about futures, the plural. And you see it all the time now with AI, or certain people have got their lens. It would be the future of work, the future of AI. And they talk about a future, not futures. And is that something you often see?
Yes. And in English, it's even not that present because the language supports the plural. But I'm originally German speaking, and in my maternal language, no one speaks in plural because it sounds really awkward and weird. So I see it, and I have to admit that I sometimes find myself using the singular form still, because this is something we are very trained on. This is something it's not very easy to let go. We are so trained on define the goal, aim for the goal, head single-mindedly at this goal. And when you put enough effort, you will reach that goal eventually. No, this is at least how I was trained in all my education, what a lot of leadership gurus are still telling today, or what you learn in a lot of personal growth things also. No? And to let go of that, to unlearn that is really difficult. So this multiplicity idea, although I think in this sense, the pandemic did a lot of good, because the world has its ways to show us I am complex, deal with it. And for me, this was one of these signs, these disruptions. Okay, you cannot control me. You think sometimes you can, maybe, but here I am, you can't. So I think this did a lot also in the field of futures to open up mindsets and to open up perspectives.
Yeah, and definitely with more recent stuff with Ukraine, Trump, all those things, they are really helping leaders realize that the importance of futures and the understanding that, you know, the world is complex and you can't control it with the traditional approach that we've been used to. So that's been quite useful for having a bit more richer conversations. But there's something that in your model that you share on your website and your social media, the Banyan canvas. We're talking about futures, but there's a real important part in complexity that's always missing is actually what part of the past do we need to bring forward or recognize comes forward. You know, we talk about path dependency. There's decisions that we've made in the past that are now going to constrain our future.
So this was why I at some point decided to create my own framework, because I'm of course aware there is a million frameworks out there, and probably the last thing the world needs is another framework. Still here I am with my own proprietary framework, because I came to the field of complexity from the future. So I engaged first with future studies, strategic foresight and the such, and then I dig deep into complexity. And what I found was that the tools that are available within the strategic foresight realm, they felt a lot of times very, very linear in the end also. Deal with a non-linear environment, because ultimately when you take scenario planning, which is super popular and super helpful, I don't want to dismiss it completely either, but it's a linear tool because you are looking for the goal. Okay, you make some of those in a lot of schools of scenario planning. Then there are those where they have only one scenario, and then you backcast and make a linear path there. And yes, you plan here and there a feedback loop or here and there a turn, but also feedback loop does not make it non-linear. It just makes it linear with a feedback loop. So
feedback loop, yeah.
And what you said, what I found in the futures was that a lot of times is super detached from the past. So it's like as if we are with our technological thinking, with our technological lens on the world, we are so used to cut the time in little slices that we forgot that there's a continuum there, and that this continuum has an impact on the work we do. And so that's why I decided, for the listeners out there who may not be familiar with what is a banyan, so where the metaphor comes from, it is a tree which grows in Asia, which is shaped like the tree, you know, all over the world. So with the classic root system, the stem, and then the crown. But additionally, it grows aerial roots, and these roots, they grow until the ground. And some of them, not all, are putting their roots again there and forming additional stems, additional trunks. So the tree grows not only in the height, but also in the lateral. And even sometimes the old trunks die and then the new trunk is there. So they are also called the wandering trees because they're moving to a lateral side. And I find this is, for me at least, a perfect metaphor on how an organization can adapt to the ecosystem it is operating in. By looking, I defined in this canvas idea, the root system is the complex present, because complex systems are very similar to rhizomatic structures, to mycelium structures, like roots of a tree or the root system of mushrooms. I defined the trunk as the past, because past is not, sometimes it is connotated very negatively past. No, it is like what is holding us back, what we did wrong. It has a negative connotation when it should not, because there is, especially in organizations that have a super long legacy, because there is a lot of companies out there that survived hundreds and hundreds of years. There is value in that history. It is not, and from now on, what brought us here cannot bring us there. We have to let it all go. And it is not realistic either, because when you carry the people, you carry the legacy. So I found it makes sense to surface that and to actively engage with that, and to actively think also about, and what are we carrying forward and what does not serve us anymore, or what we learned in the past did already not serve us in the past, but maybe will serve us in the what yet to come. Because in the strategic processes, I found the past was usually only there by bringing the people to the table. So it was only this view on the past from the people who were engaged in the process, but not in a surfaced, really conscious way. And then the futures is the crown, because I said thinking in consequences does not really help us because there is no linear consequences. So I like to see the futures more at what can grow out of what we are planting and seeding now. And this aerial root structure is then forming the kind of action net. So this is where you can, when you have to use complexity language, when you engage with the constraint and the constructors of the present, the past, and also the futures, then you can start taking decisions for the here and now.
Yes.
So this is the idea behind.
Yeah. And, with those, you can start to actively shape, especially your fit with the external environment.
Yes, because this is another aspect which I found very valuable in engaging with futures work, this agency it creates, this realization. Futures is not something just happening. Futures is something where I have a say in it. And not in a way like, I'm not sure what the English name of Pippi Langstrumpf is, Pippi, this children hero, because she says, I do create my world as I want to have it. It's not in this way either, because of course there are limitations and it's not all in our hands, but some things are. It is also not in all the other hands only.
Is that Pippi Longstockings?
Longstockings, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
I know it only in German, sorry.
No, that's cool. And you're right. I think there's a lot where sometimes when it feels, and you go back to that feeling and actually is complex, but for leaders' perspective, that things are complex, there's a lot of ambiguity around it. You can see that they feel done to, rather than realizing what they can do to start to increase their choices. And this is where I think futures is really useful, because futures gives you that space to increase your choices, rather than waiting to limit your choices because you're now having to react to circumstances that you've come to you due to paralysis.
Yes, and the more you engage with this space of possibilities, as I like to call it, so because it is a space, it is not a two-dimensional thing. The more comfortable you also feel within this ambiguous space, and the more you are engaging with this kind of thinking, the more it becomes clear to you also that certainty is an illusion created by us. So, and the more you realize about that, the more comfortable you feel with, okay, I don't know it all. I don't have all the data I might possibly need to take the right decision. But the task is also not to take the right decision, but to take the right decision in this moment. And then only looking back, you will know if it is, or even then not, you will know if it's right or wrong. So it is not about creating this certainty to put on a path which then is valid for the next 50 years, but to take step by step. And as you said, futures helps you to shed more light on the path ahead in order to have more comfort with this next step. It does not tell you what the 10th step will be. It is not about this. It is really about having a little bit more space in taking decisions.
Yeah. And I keep advising people, on average, an executive team spends 1 hour a month, at most, anything that is considered outside and future. So 1 hour a month, out of all that, you got to think how much are they missing? How much richness are they not seeing because they're so internally focused?
Yes. And additionally, because the future gets more colorful the more people you bring in. Again, when you look at it from a complexity lens, complexity can be shown as all these little knots, super interconnected, and there is no clear pathway. So when you are as an individual looking with your little possibility, you have to shed light on what is ahead. You maybe see 1 or 2 dots of all the hundreds which are there as a possible next connection. But when you bring in other people, they also shed the light on the same area. And then suddenly you see 5. And when you bring another person with another perspective, suddenly you see 25. And it opens up totally different new opportunities, but also threats. It is never, this is for me a very important point. Futures is not only about seeing the good, it is about just looking. Because sometimes it is going into this direction to create a utopia and to create everything preferred. I'm a little bit cautious with those terms because then you always have to ask preferred for whom, utopia for
Yes,
whom,
yeah,
and
yeah.
for whom not, because it is never applicable to everybody. But the more people you bring into these processes, the bigger the enlightened area is, and the more you can sense, okay, is this the direction we can go, we want to go? What would we need to go there? Or what do we already have that supports to go there? So participation is a big point for me. And
Yeah.
this is sometimes I see in organizations that strategy is still very limited to a very certain type of people, which does not support to see the opportunities and threats.
Yeah, totally right. It really is especially futures and strategy is a social thing. It's a participatory thing. You know, it's open up those and listen to different perspectives. But traditionally we tend to get locked in and go, right, we follow a process. You know, right. The end of the year's coming, so we need new strategy, obviously, because that's what they do. So they'll go through, get all the data of the past. They'll start then making trends analysis normally. And maybe do a little benchmarking stuff, you know, whatever's in vogue at the moment. And then they'll hurry to present something to the board, mainly on financial stuff. And then once the board's finally rubber stamped it, that's it. It's almost as if the strategy, everything is locked in. And no matter what is happening in the external environment or what's changing, that doesn't matter because they can't move away from the strategy that is being approved from above.
The interesting point in that, what I heard from several people throughout completely different organizations and levels of experience, a lot of people say, yeah, we do strategy because you have to do strategy. And we all know that the plan we are making is not really right, that it will never be right because you cannot predict the future. But we anyway do it because they say we have to do it. So lately I'm asking a lot this polemic question, why do you do even strategy? So do you really need it? For what you're needing it? What do you really do with it? Because I found also that this purpose, this why am I doing strategy? Is it because I need a planning for my financial resources, how I allocate them, and this is the primary reason? Or if I say, no, I want to find a directionality for my complete organization, so a more longer term directionality without this specific goal, then there is a completely different approach doing these two kind of things. And both is, in my understanding, a legit strategy. But so if you never ask this question, why am I doing something? Then you will not find the right means to do it. Because for making financial allocation, probably traditional tools are a very good support and a very good frame to do so, because it has a very limited scope and you know enough data in order to do that. But if you are going a little bit more into innovation, into exploration, into directionality, adaptability, then probably you should engage with some other ways of thinking and doing. But a lot of organizations do not love this question, I have to admit here.
No.
Just to be very clear.
I could imagine. Yeah, and I like your term. One, I love that question because I think just that question, why are we doing this, is just unearth some interesting perspectives about where they see the state of the organisation or their fit with the external environment and what their concerns, worries are about where they're going. And I also like the term directionality because, as we say, strategy shouldn't be this fixed linear path. Strategy is a sense of we understand our intent of what we're trying to do, but how we do that, we could probably definitely use futures figured out the first few steps that make sense. And then that's that thing around let's understand as we start to interact with the external environment. Let's see what unfolds, what choices present themselves, what assumptions that we made are no longer true, and I think that's the true sort of relationship with strategy.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, you realize that already. I'm using a lot of images and metaphors in my speaking because I found that when you speak in metaphors, people tend to understand you better because it's a different kind of understanding neurobiologically. So I like to take this picture of an emerging archipelago. So you have this sea with the currents and with the winds and with the monsters and with the fish. And then you have some islands here and there, but these islands are also not super fixed or forever there, but they are popping up and some others are broken down. And this is the environment we are navigating as an organization. It is not anymore this, we have a stable ground and we build a road. That's why I'm super on warpath with the word roadmap, because how you use a roadmap on open water. This is always my question. What do you do with the roadmap when you're out at the sea? It does not really serve the purpose. And also this, because to navigate a ship is a different thing than to drive a car or to drive a bus. So, and I think this is the change we need to make throughout the organization, throughout all the levels, to be comfortable being on a sailing ship that sometimes has an additional motor and sometimes not. We are sometimes just dependent on winds and currents, and sometimes we have a say in where we are going. And I think this is a mind shift that is ongoing. So I perceive that there is a lot acknowledgement of this situation, in the sense of people realize that there is this uncertainty is maybe not a helpful word, because also it encourages this feeling of it's going to get worse somehow. No? And it is not that, when it just says, okay, we don't know if it's going to be better or worse. And I feel that it's just ongoing, this shift from driving the car to navigating the ship and eventually swimming sometime.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping to see good shifts in mindset or perspectives around this. I'm ex-military. I spent my life realizing that life is chaos, so roll with it. And we get quite comfortable in that space. There was something you mentioned earlier about people having this utopian look of futures, but what I often also see is people having a dystopian view. And how do you advise leaders to avoid the dystopian trap?
So I fully agree. The dystopian is even very widespread, at least in our Western world, because, I mean, just have a look at any media. It is like doomsdays, it's the Black Monday for the stock markets and whatever. I mean, it's really, you feel that tomorrow maybe the sun is not going up anymore. And I read a sentence in a German philosophy book the other day, which I found tremendously helpful, because the author is an architectural philosopher, which I found already extremely brilliant.
There you go. Yeah.
But he's writing about democracy and the development of democracy. And he's stating only a society that sets its horizon as an absolute can stand in front of the abyss. And I think that is so true. So that means only when you have this fixed set goal, this fixed set idea that like this it needs to be, then you see that everything is going to get worse and awful, because you don't see anything behind. But when you engage with futures and with this idea that the futures are a horizon and a landscape in itself, and they are just always moving, then you understand that they will never be per se negative or positive, because they just will be. They are not still. So they are developing, and partly they are developing the way we are taking the decisions now. And when you understand this connection, somehow it makes you more hopeful, which is interesting for me also. But Admittedly, I'm a futurist. I'm engaging also a lot with positive signals and this kind of thing. Still, sometimes I have to close the newspaper because, yeah, it is really not helpful.
It's not, especially at the moment.
Yeah,
But
actually.
you bring a great point. We use Cohen-Ashman theory. Your ability to regulate the system is only good as the model you're using to regulate the system. And I think that comes true in that quote you said around, actually, is my model based on different perspectives, different opportunities, both positive and also risks that we need to be aware of? Am I seeing, have I got multiple futures present and I'm looking for what those signs are? Or is my model just fixed? And am I just going off a fixed roadmap and then consciously or unconsciously disregarding anything that is different to what my belief is? Which I think the latter is definitely not a good place for leaders to be in.
Exactly, because looking a little bit broader, societal on this topic, when we set the life we are living now as the absolute good, yeah, then probably it can only get worse. But who says that the way we are living now is the absolute good? Because we don't know what is coming. Maybe it's getting better because we don't have a definition for this. And I think for organization, it's a similar kind of question. But what I also found, and I discussed that the other day with someone working with farms, and I found that a very interesting perspective. A farm cannot focus solely on the customer because they are so embedded in an ecosystem that directing all processes towards a client just does not work.
Yeah.
I think this is also an idea supported by complexity and future thinking that needs to be embraced by organizations in other industrial sectors as well. That you are not early on directing so much, but leaving a little bit space for that the things can converge on their own.
I like that. What advice would you give to leaders now that they're listening to how to start to engage in futures in a more effective, positive way?
So I think to start with future thinking in an organization, it's extremely valuable to bring an outside perspective, to bring this impulse to open up windows where the people inside the organization may have seen only walls. But on the midterm, because when you have this impulse and when you engage with these ideas of the multiplicity and okay, everyone has their own lens to see that, then you can establish within the organization these kind of processes, maybe to look on your own for signals of change, to see, okay, what is changing, what is shifting, and not only with a profit mindset in the sense of, okay, and where does my business model fit in these changes? Because this is why most organizations engage with trends, don't they? And as said in the earlier on, and the more you are engaging with this headspace of space of possibility, multiplicity, non-linearity, the more comfort you get, and the more comfortable you are with uncertain decisions. With this, okay, let's take the next step, the next and the next. And I know a directionality because I engage with what I want to see and what I would like to see in what is yet to come, and to take the step into this direction.
Yes, it's great. And bringing that outside person in, I often call them I call them the beautiful idiot. And the reason why I say this is probably not the best term, is that because they are not in the system,
yes,
they will ask the most obvious and simple questions.
Yes.
But it's often those ones that we miss and we unconsciously just ignore, thinking that we just assume. I think we've just looked at it, where they'll actually ask these questions. So why do you, back to your point earlier, why are we even doing this strategy? It's a very uncomfortable but simple question. And I think that's what they bring really well. And I like your idea around just looking for these different signals, different changes, and seeing where, even playing around with the idea around if this happens and this happens, what could that do?
Or even an exercise I just used in a group of teachers actually, because there is these amazing AI tools out there, and so I am currently playing around a lot with the Sora tool of OpenAI. And in general, people are doing memes with them that are hilariously, but for futures purposes, these tools are awesome, because what I did is I created an image of a possible future scenario in the town I was holding the workshop in. And I brought this image to the workshop, and we just started with the question, what do you see when you look at this image? And then the second question is, and what don't you see? What is missing? What would you want to see? And then, because this simple exercise is surfacing so much on what narratives and what ideas and what past we are bringing to the table when engaging with futures. And it's extremely valuable also as a team exercise. It does not even need to be necessarily incorporated in a strategy process. It can be a single standing exercise just to engage with this multiplicity and with this multiplicity of views and this surfacing of narratives and ideas we carry, which do not necessarily will be present in the yet to come. They are now here, but if we carry them forward or not is another thing. So this is a really easygoing starting point.
And I recommend any leader listening to try that with their team. And I saw you post that the other day on LinkedIn. Yes.
You can go on to my
LinkedIn. And I think
just.
Yeah, and I think it's fantastic because, especially as leaders, we just assume a lot.
Mm.
We just make assumptions a lot about what other people are thinking. But really what we're trying to do is get what's implicitly held for someone, try and get that explicit, because the more we get it explicit, the more understandable it is.
Mm.
And then we can minimize a lot of the friction around misinformation transfer. Like, be curious about, so, that question, what did you want to see?
Yes.
And, try and understand what is it about that you want to see? How is that going to be helpful for you? I think these questions really start to surface some really good insights to exactly what you're saying, what stuff we're carrying, what are we going to take in the future? How am I seeing it?
What the experience with this exercise shows is, because the pictures themselves, they are neutral. They just show something, And one of the first questions I'm usually asking is, so how does that image makes you feel? Because we automatically engage with it in a sense. For me, nowadays, a lot of people react dystopian, like, negative. Yeah, but why?
Yes.
Why? Yeah, okay, there's a robot. Okay, a robot is a robot inherently negative. Is that necessarily a negative thing that there is a robot there?
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, because in their belief that a robot's going to take over the world and make us all slaves. But that's, and I think it comes back to that dystopian view. It's the beliefs that we have, and just because we believe them to be true, it doesn't necessarily mean they're true in reality.
Exactly.
And we can challenge those. I think that's fantastic.
I think that's very valuable within an organization also when it comes to innovation and to inventing or coming up with new business models, because a lot of times also it's the beliefs we carry that keep us from making this step to innovating and to make a new product or a new service.
Yes. Yeah, and you hear that all the time. When we're doing any sort of change, there's that resistance, but the resistance is due to a belief. And I think taking that time to unearth that and realize, what are you seeing?
Yes.
What is concerning you? I think that's really good, especially trying to get people to move forward in the future and not be too guarded. Because we're guarded, we start to get safe. What stuff are you starting to see that is quite positive in sort of the landscape futures?
So what positive signals or changes I'm seeing?
Yes.
Actually, last year I did a workshop with a colleague of mine only on positive signals, and it was super difficult to find them. Because that made me realize also that this with the lenses, although I'm aware of it, it does not mean that I don't have them,
Yeah.
But what I do see positively now is that I work also with youth. And for example, young people, they do see technology as positive, as enabling widely, but they carry a deep value for human interaction and like jobs and roles they see inherently human. So this doomsday narrative we have that the next generations, they are only in the metaverse and they do not talk to each other anymore and whatever. I did not find that true with the groups I work with, which gives me a lot of hope for humanity that we are maybe able again to relate better than we do these days. In the technology realm, I have to say, all the signals you see, they are neither that nor that. Technology itself is not inherently negative or positive, it's what we do with it. Although I'm missing a little bit this dialogue, should we do what we can do? This is a little bit this ethical aspect. I'm especially in AI, or have you seen this, notice that they are cloning the extinct wolf?
Yes, I've just seen, I saw that. Yeah.
These kind of things where I just recently seen Jurassic Park, and you're thinking like, yeah, hey, do we really? So in the realm of climate change and ecology, there is a lot of positive news. There is news that rewildering is taking place. Animals get bigger population again, also in urban spaces, because the people realize that we are cohabitants and not we rule the world. So in this space, I see positive signals, but in general, as I said, I'm not a utopian. I do not see the future as inherently negative or positive. And I think that already helps to move out of the dystopian, everything is going bust and tomorrow there will not be a sun kind of thinking.
Yeah, I think that's great advice for any sort of leaders or strategists, is the fact that when you're looking at the future, so you're looking at anything, there is always going to be a positive or a negative. And back to your point that you made earlier, in a sense, is good. So for whom?
Exactly.
And yeah, and I think that's a really good distinction to make, that yes, there's positive and negative everything, there's opportunities, there's threats with everything, but then we've got to understand from whose perspective are we looking at to say that's positive and negative, because there will be different people in there that are affected in different ways.
This great question in any workshop situation: who is in the room and who is not, and why not?
Yes. Yeah. And it's understanding like whose voice should be heard.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's great question to do. I've really enjoyed the conversation with you today and exploring futures, and I think we definitely looked at some ways that just definitely dispel some myths about futures and what it is, being balanced throughout that, and also a few things and what leaders can do. And I'll link your Banyan model to the show notes so people can have a look at that, and I recommend that they look at it, because it's a great model to bring not only the future but all understand path dependency of the past. But if you could leave leaders with one thing to think about from today, what would that be?
What future do you want? So this is a question we hardly ever ask ourselves, neither in the private nor in the organizational. So what futures do you want?
Do you know, just on reflection, and it's really apt that your organization is called Simple Thinking, because your questions and the way you put them concisely, I just think are beautifully simple.
Thank you.
And yeah, and I think they really are beautifully simple in a way that it just gets you to stop. It almost hits you in the face and think, wow, okay, I need to stop and think about that, because they are simple but uncomfortable.
The goal is to make people stop in the hamster wheel and just look out tiny little bit. They don't need to step out. I'm not saying everybody should step out of the hamster wheel, but now and then to just, peek a little bit what else there is. I think it's a good thing. And especially, this is my very personal opinion, in the times we are living with this technological progress and what AI can do already and will be able to do very, very soon, our way we humans think is still a very high asset, and still the technology cannot do it in the way we can. So we should really take the time to foster it and to engage with what we are able to do, and with also let it flourish and let it grow, instead of just not think and just take whatever screen is telling us.
Yeah, and I think that's an easy trap to do with AI, which is because it's so easy to give you answers, but don't look to things like AI to give you the answers. Use it to support you, to find information, to challenge your assumptions, not give you the answers. And I love that, your thing around, what future do you want? Because it's quite easy for us to just get zoned in, like you said, and just look in this narrow path. And then we take some time, or something happens, and we're forced to sit back and go, wow, how am I here? I wanted to be over there, but now I'm over here. That the energy to get from where you wanted to be to where you are is far more than taking the time to, like you said, get off your hamster wheel, peek out, and keep yourself directionality, keep yourself on that sort of track. And thank you so much, Eva, for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope you enjoyed your time on the podcast.
Yes, I enjoyed tremendously, and as said, love the title, because this reality hit, I think, a lot of organizations faced it. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye.